Hello and welcome to Shadow of the Cast, a Marvel Champions podcast. I'm Villain Theory and I'm here with Nelson. And what are we talking about today?
Oh, we're talking about some new stuff. It's always a good day when we get new Marvel champions. Talking about Deadpool, X-23, and the the polarizing pool aspect. I think that's a good adjective for it. The polarizing pool aspect. That's what we're talking about today. I'm excited because this was a really fun release for me.
Yeah, this was really fun for me as well. And I think the pool aspect, I've definitely seen some very divided opinions, put it that way. So I'm excited to talk about that one. Yeah.
And we're going to also go into some user submitted questions. So we have a couple of community questions that we're going to talk about here at the end. And if you have questions that you want us to talk about, go ahead and email us at shadowofthecast@gmail.com. And we will make sure to get to one of your questions in a future episode. But let's dive in. I want to talk about X-23 first. I think we can talk about Deadpool and Pool kind of together, but let's talk about X-23. She can throw some damage.
Yeah, I mean, both of these characters have a lot of damage and a lot of healing and but work extremely differently. And the first thing that jumped out at me about X-23 is that all of her cards are extremely good. Every time one of her hero cards comes into my hand, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to play that. Oh, I want to play that. I want to play, oh yeah, I want to play all of her cards every time. And yet, because they're cheap, I can still play aspect stuff around it. So it's kind of that, sometimes a hero, where all their hero cards are extremely good, I feel like I'm just playing those the whole game. But with her, I'm still playing those like as a super high priority, but I get to do other stuff around it. So I've really enjoyed that. But tell me, what is your favorite thing been about X-23? What jumps out of you, as your best thing?
Yeah, so I really like pain tolerance. And so like kind of what you were saying where her hero cards are so good, and then once you have pain tolerance, which is the upgrade that after you play one of her cards you get to heal. And so the sequencing there of taking damage to ready, then playing cards so that she can get the heal. I mean, she's only at 10 health, and so she doesn't have a huge health pool for a hero that wants to be taking damage in both the villain and the player phase. And so having pain tolerance to help heal that, the sequencing there is really good. And like you were saying, because all her cards are so cheap, she is tied for the lowest cost curve in the game with Nebula. So she has on average less than 1 cost per card, which is insane. So you can play so many cards, which increases the amount of sequencing and the decision space that you have to make when you want to be taking damage with the claws to ready to get that plus attack. It's a puzzle that I'm still not figured out 100%, but it's definitely a fun one. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like when I play her, it's very much like rapid fire. I'm doing lots of small things, but they're having surprisingly big impact, and the order's really fun. On the surface, oh, I attack, and maybe I want to ready an attack again. Maybe that's pretty straightforward. Damage. But actually, with the way all her cards interact with it, the honey badger sequencing as well. She's quite often on the table. All these things combined, and then she goes really well with one of my favorite cards in the game, Repurpose. But you can build her with any kind of combination of readying, basic attack stuff, and it's so much fun. And it's really rapid fire sequencing is what I'm going to call it here, because you do things in such different orders to get different things going on. I love it. I think it's really fun and engaging. I like her a lot more than I expected.
Yeah, that's true. And one of the other things that I think was a nice surprise, at least for me, was I thought that she was going to rely on Honey Badger a lot more than she actually does. So I've played difficult games where Honey Badger never hit the table, and she is just fine. When I saw that preview article, I thought that Honey Badger was going to be that key piece to her kit that really needed her to sing. Now, don't get me wrong, when Honey Badger's on the table, she's much, much better. But you really don't need Honey Badger to be successful with X-23 because she has other ways to take damage. She can ready. If Honey Badger's buried on the bottom of your deck, you don't have to get her in play, and you can still have a decent game and take out some pretty challenging villains. And so that was a nice surprise as well, because I know I've seen a little bit of hesitation online where people are, not super thrilled that the over reliance on a specific card, in this case being an ally, where I don't necessarily think I see that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I also know some people don't like allies, and I think that can put people off. I think Vivian in Vision, some people already enjoy Vision, and I can enjoy him from time to time, certainly. But I think that puts people off. Some people say, it's more Vivian than Vision sometimes. But Honey Badger's supporting what you want to do. And I think that's really cool. But yeah, I agree. I do think it's a huge boost when she's on the table, especially if you can get one of the training upgrades onto her. But if she's not on the board,
Mm,
you're still readying up, destroying everything in front of you. You know, that 2 fort stat and the ability to ready is still just incredibly good as just on its own. Kind of like Captain America is how I kind of feel. I can fort for two, or I can, fort for two, attack for maybe three or something. You know, it's just really flexible. Do what you need, where you need to.
yeah, I think X-23 is really good. Now, I've spent a lot of my time. We're recording this fairly soon after the release, and I've spent a lot of my time up until this point playing Deadpool. So I don't have as much experience with X-23 as I do with Deadpool. But I don't know if I played her in Aggression yet. Actually, that may be embarrassing to say. Anyways, I don't have as much experience that as I think you do. So, what is your favorite aspect to play with X-23?
So this has worked out quite well because I've not played half as much Deadpool as I have
Oh, perfect.
X-23. I'm really torn. I actually really like both Justice and Protection for her.
Heck yeah, let's go.
And I normally prefer leadership and aggression, but I think those are actually really good for her still. I think she's amazing, like really good in every aspect. But what I love about protection is it has the most readies. So you've got like leading blow, what doesn't kill me, repurpose. But even counterpunch is kind of a pseudo ready. You know, you get that attack stat used again. So I've really enjoyed that. But then on the flip side, Injustice, I think Upside the Head is just really good card. Someone who can ready up a lot. And it's got, making an entrance is a really fun healing card to help top you up when you're taking, damage from your claws and things. So it's really fun combination. And I genuinely struggle to say I like one more than the other.
Okay. Yeah, I have played Protection. I am excited to dive a little bit more into Protection, but the counterpunch combo with Laura is just absurd, right? Zero cost attack event that she can only play after you defend, which is a lot of, weird prequels to play this card. However, because her Claw Mastery, because Repurpose give you the attack bonus until the end of the round, you're looking at, and her claws actually as well. So Claw Mastery, claws, repurpose. You can counterpunch 0 for 3, which is above that curve. If you just use the claws, if you use claws mastery, now you're looking at 5. Repurpose and energy barrier, you're looking at 7. And she always wants to defend. And that's the other thing that I've kind of learned through my plays is with the 2 defense stat, she wants to take damage, especially on expert mode. You're probably taking damage if you defend with a 2. You're probably leaking over some damage, but her ability to ready, her living weapon ability is once per phase. So you get to ready, but you get to play counterpunch. And it's just, you can 0 for 7 just feels good.
Yeah, it feels really, really good. I think that's an interesting thing, that defense where you get to ready so often makes it really valuable. And even if I don't ready with it, which has happened, actually a surprising amount, it was interesting how, even if I didn't ready from it, I was still fine because I could easily ready anyway next time. But yeah, 0 for 7 is amazing. What I've been running with her in solo a lot is specialized training, which came with her. And I think even if you're not in Justice, you can still remove a lot of threat with her. Then you can get that extra +1 attack to then get even crazier damage output. Just really solid all round, just incredibly, incredibly good. Leadership good as well. I think Clarity of Purpose, like a second Grim Resolve, is really useful for those flexible readies early on. And Aggression, just because she has that good baseline forwarding, you can go crazy with it.
Yeah, I had a really fun leadership build, which I don't think was optimal, but it was fun, which was a Voltron deck for Honey Badger and Iron Man. And so I used Call for Aid to grab Iron Man early, which put Honey Badger in my discard pile. That was kind of the idea, right? You could put Honey Badger in the discard pile, use her alter ego ability to put her back into a smaller deck and get her early, and then just run a ton of upgrades. And you had Iron Man and Honey Badger just going crazy. Now it really sucks when you draw your obligation and lose like a fully Voltron Honey Badger, but like that's too bad. But it was a lot of fun to have a lot of those upgrades on her, increase the health with like the reinforced suits, command teams, and get readies. Just because every single time Honey Badger takes damage or attacks, takes that consequential, you get to ready X-23, and you're probably looking at a 3 attack there. I mean, it's been a lot of fun, but you did mention specialized training. I want to talk about this new basic side scheme. So I'm going to read it out just so that we're all on the same page. It's a 1-cost player side scheme. Victory 0. When defeated, each player who does not control a specialization upgrade chooses one set aside specialization upgrade and puts it into play under their control. It comes in with 5 threat per player. What are your thoughts on this new side scheme that we got?
This might be there's a lot of good ones, but this might be the best player side scheme. And I've not fully made up my opinion, but I'm definitely trying to find ways to include this on a lot of heroes, wherever I can, or because 5 threat is a lot to remove, but the
Yep.
bonus is like whatever stat boost you want. Even when you could get that's outside the normal aspect, that would provide it. And basically Avengers Mansion for yourself, card draw not as quite as reliable, but still very reliable.
It to me, it feels like most optimized decks probably have this at this point. It's so good, especially in multiplayer. If you have a 4-player, 20 threat is not the end of the world to remove, especially if you have a dedicated Justice player, and you get effectively 4 Avengers Mansions on the table, stat boost. It's absurdly powerful, and it's one of those cards that I'm looking to take out of a deck rather than put in at this point because 5 threat. It doesn't have any, lingering effect to stay on the table, so you can just toss it out there and thwart it down at your leisure. But it feels really good. It feels really good. I mean, like Miss Marvel doesn't want it, but I'm trying to figure out like what heroes don't want this in their kit because the specialization upgrades are going to give you either a +1 attack, defense, thwart, and then the last one gives you hit points. And then whenever you make a basic activation of those associated stats or you take damage, you get to draw a card. And it's fun because it can almost be a tactical decision rather than like I'm always going to take the combat specialist, the +1 attack, because if you are running into a scenario where, oh my goodness, we're like overwhelmed with threat, you may want to take like the surveillance specialist, which gives you that thwart. Usually you have an idea of what you're going to take when you go into into it, but I have found myself pivoting at some point to switch to pick a different one game to game, but it's good. It's very good.
Yep, I mean, I would fully agree. Very, very good. And there are heroes I haven't been using it on in solo play. Some of the early heroes who have less thwarting. If I'm in an aspect that doesn't have a lot of thwarting, maybe like aggression, or I'd even say pool aspect, potentially, I'm not always putting it in. But in Justice, almost always. Leadership, kind of almost always, I feel like. And on a lot of the modern heroes, especially like the X-Men and most of the like X-Force, really good thwarting. Like you can definitely find 5-spare thwarting for the benefits this gives, unless you're really under the worst pressure. I would say I don't think it goes in every deck in solo play, because some characters do struggle to remove 5 threat while keeping the game afloat. But in multiplayer, yes, I'm taking that. And
Yeah.
in most heroes, most aspects, I'm still probably trying to take this card. So it's good. It is a fun card, and you do have to work for it. So it's tricky for me to say, this is overpowered, because I do not feel like as soon as I have it, the game is trivialized. Not by any means, but it is so good.
It is really, really good. Do you have a favorite specialist card?
I'm a simple guy. I like combat specialist.
That's
I like
fair.
the damage.
I've been having a lot of fun with frontline specialists. One that gives you +4 hit points, and then every time you take damage, you get to draw a card. Now, I think they have said that they're going to errata this card because currently it says your hero gets +4, and they're going to change it to your identity gets +4, so you don't lose those 4 hit points when you flip down to alter ego. But I've been having a lot of fun with that, just giving an additional buffer, especially on some of these like lower hit point heroes, right? And you get to draw a card. Like I think that one's a more interesting design, and I've been having fun with that, especially in Deadpool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to actually branch into the pool aspect very briefly here before I
Yeah.
forget. I think frontline specialist, taking the damage goes so well there because you've got healing factor. So
Oh yeah.
you can take the hit, get the card draw, and then heal up a little bit, and then your main stats are still flexible. Because one of the downsides of picking that specialist, training upgrade from it is if my attack is boosted, I'm going to try and use that, which kind of reduces the flexibility. I mean, it's kind of artificial because I could still use my thwarting, or I could still basic defend, but I know I'm losing a card draw and an extra damage, so it kind of dissuades me. But when it's just a health boost, you're still very flexible. And I've had Star-Lord with booster boots and healing factor, giving me basically sort of 3 pseudo defense a turn, not having to exhaust, which has been kind of a fun thing. And he can be a little bit squishy with those encounter cards, so that kind of buffer I think is actually quite nice in that regard. Although he does have a lot of readying, which I do love combat specialists, but it's got some. There's some really cool uses. It's really really cool, and I still think the other ones are good. I did a two-player game yesterday with a friend. They were playing a character that starts with one defense, Captain Marvel, but we did a bit of a weird build. So they ended up having their helmet in play, aerial, and then I gave them this, and ended up having with armored vest, I think 5 defense, starting at
There you
1
go.
defense,
Nice. Let's go.
which was kind of a crazy transition to
Yeah.
be this kind of invincible tank, which she's already pretty tanky, so that was fun. So yeah, I really I think it's so good. All of them are so
Nice.
good.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's talk about Deadpool, because Deadpool to me was a character that I mean, like, I'm always excited about new characters in Marvel Champions, but in the relative scale, I was not excited about Deadpool. So that changed. I have been having a lot of fun with Deadpool. I've played a lot of games with him. I think that he is incredibly powerful. He has a lot of really interesting cards. His whole shtick is whenever he's defeated, he's not defeated. You place an acceleration token on the main scheme, and you flip over to Alter Ego, set your hit point value to 1, and then a lot of his cards play off the acceleration. So, for like example, his montage card, which is resource, 1 wild generates additional resources based on how many acceleration tokens are on the main. I think that I kind of had combined Deadpool and Pool in the same like space in my brain. And I like Deadpool a lot more than I like Pool. We'll talk about Pool here in a second. But Deadpool, I think, is slightly gimmicky as a Deadpool character should be, but I think he's way more of a straightforward, viable hero than I was expecting. But you haven't played as much Deadpool, but what are your initial thoughts on Wade Wilson?
So I'm gonna go a bit out there with this. So long before I did any videos or podcasts for Marvel Champions a few years ago now, I was really into fighting games. I actually streamed them a bit, that I still watch them from time to time now. And there's some interesting terms and technical bits from that you could actually apply to Marvel Champions. So this is going to go somewhere. So we're going on a journey.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you to imagine a fighting game, 2 characters sort of side by side trying to fight. They start off in what we call neutral, so they're both kind of even. No one's got a hit on anyone. Everything's kind of just even. And in Marvel Champions, I would compare that to maybe you've not got much on the board, but Knife has the villain, that kind of thing. It's all kind of no one's got an upper hand. You're not really feeling confident, but you're not worried about anything. Now, in a fighting game, when you land a hit on somebody, you start to combo them. You start to do a series of hits, and that means you're in the kind of advantage state, and you want to try and, when you're in a good position, get as much out of it as possible. And if you're in a bad position, you need to try and reset. So in Marvel Champions, if you're overwhelmed by lots of minion stuff out, you're trying to stabilize. You're trying to you're trying to do damage control and get things back. But if you've got a massive built-up board and the villain had a really weak encounter card or something, and their board is open, you're like, okay, I can go to town here. I can build up, that kind of thing. So that is how I see it. And certain characters that are disliked in fighting games are characters that skip one of these vital kind of, stages of the game and don't have to play it. They can kind of ignore it. So for Deadpool, I would say he's never really in disadvantage, and he never really has to worry about neutral, where everything's even, you're trying to get that first hit. He kind of just does what he wants, takes the hits, keeps on going, and that has been a really fun and different experience for me. I've liked him.
Very thematic as well.
Yeah. I've liked he's just doing Deadpool things, and the villain's getting very annoyed, but I've liked him more than I expected, because I'm okay on Deadpool. I'm not like his biggest fan. I know my partner really likes him, but for me, he's just like, he's all right. He's just another Marvel character to me. With a funny gimmick, but I like him more than I expected. He's a character I don't see myself playing often, but I could go back to him regularly for this fun, very different, very unusual experience and enjoy it. Whereas he kind of just breaks the game. He's kind of quote unquote broken, and he is very powerful, although he can kind of lose out of nowhere as well. If you're taking that hit, going down to 1 hit point, and then, going Alter Ego, an encounter card or even the wrong boost card for that attack can actually defeat you. And I'm not going to lie, that happened to me. I think on my second game with him, it's like, oh, I lose now. I have no way to deal with this take 2 damage card or something. So he's got that kind of risk reward, but the reward is enormous.
Yeah, I think outside of some of those cards, like I got hit by the ship command. I was playing, I was Ronin. I was playing Ronin, and the the environment where I flipped it at the end of the villain phase, take 1 damage. Oops. I only have 1 damage or 1 health left. But I mean, outside of those niche cases in solo play, there's not much that can stop him. And he can rush so fast, and he can rush without even cards that need without even aspect cards. His entire like win strategy, you can easily win in 2 turns with his kit. And I think that will probably, to your point, mean that I won't pull him out as frequently as I will other heroes, because the card and the combo that I've just been kind of playing around with is Wade starts an alter ego. You mulligan hard for a health boost, either the symbiote suit or endurance. Even if you don't get that, you can use his break the fourth wall ability to go grab maximum effort, flip up, take 8 damage, deal 8 damage. Villain knocks you down back to alter ego, which you can use your ability again to grab this card as fire, or you could heal and flip back up and do it all again. And it's I don't know what stops it, right? Because there's nothing that really stops. Even like Ronin with tough on both stages, I beat Ronin in 2 turns, and it's probably more consistent than most rush heroes, honestly, because there's not that many things that can stop him. But yeah, it's fun, I guess.
It's his damage potential, his rush potential is kind of goofy. Like, it's absurd.
Yeah.
I will say certain villains do really counter him. You know, some of them do have a lot of take this extra damage, take this indirect damage. Now you're forced to play allies, you know, try and get target acquired up and, you know, kind of dodge ways around it, which does slow him down a bit. So it's a really weird situation where right now where I am with him is I think against some villains, he loses, you know, harder than actually some quite a lot, you know, fairly, you know, in relative to the, you know, the list. Because even the weak villains, even the weak heroes are still pretty good in a lot of situations. But, you know, I'd rate him a bit lower along with them sometimes, just because he could lose out of nowhere when most characters should be winning almost, you know, 90 to 100% of the time against some of these characters. Whereas against the very hardest characters in the game, you know, let's say your expert Ronins, or even, you know, throw someone on heroic mode, expert 2, all of that stuff, because he can win so incredibly fast and ignores so much of the fundamental gameplay that every other character has to deal with, he's probably like the best against some of those characters. You know, the higher you put the difficulty for him, the higher I rate him compared to everyone else, because he can kind of cheat. He kind of does Deadpool things. You know, he breaks the fourth wall, he breaks all the rules, and it's devastating. So yeah, kind of a weird one for me. I don't really like Rush too much personally. I play it from time to time, but I think Deadpool does it in such a fun, exciting way. And as I play a lot of 2-player, that changes things up a lot, because you cannot win quite so quickly unless the other player's also trying to rush. But even then, no one rushes quite like Deadpool.
No, we need a shirt. No one rushes quite like Deadpool. But yeah, I mean, I think in a multiplayer game, Deadpool gets a lot more dynamic and interesting in his gameplay, because I think my favorite card in the entire kit is It Ain't Over. So his whole shtick is putting acceleration tokens on the main scheme, which accelerates you to loss. But It Ain't Over, you attach it to the main scheme and it increases the target threshold by 2 per acceleration token. And so you're getting a little bit of safety when you're putting It Ain't Over on that main, and you can really kind of be okay. And so like I've targeted It Ain't Over for superpower training. It's a little bit of a safety net on that main scheme. And I played a game with Justice where It Ain't Over and Under Surveillance was on the main. Just like it threats out at infinity. So we'll but yeah, It Ain't Over is fun. Cable is fun, where he gets plus attack based on the acceleration tokens in the main scheme but I think the most interesting card in this kit, and I'm really excited to talk to you about this one, is Arm to the Teeth. This is a 2-cost upgrade. After you play Arm to your Teeth, you get to go find a weapon upgrade from your collection. That means any card in the game that you currently have, and you can, as an action, swap Arm to the Teeth with a weapon upgrade you control. So you can pull an off-aspect card into play with Arm to the Teeth. But what are you targeting with Arm to the Teeth?
Well, my first game ever with him was in the pool aspect. So I went and grabbed some lightsabers. Some laser swords. But quite a lot of the time, because he wins so fast, it's been actually I've liked hand cannon, because, you know, I can bypass guard, you know, with some attacks, that kind of thing. But they're so good. I think my favorites have been hand cannon, Sonic Rifle and the Laser Sword.
Very cool. Yeah. I Sonic Rifle is so good, and you can get it for effectively free 3 effective resources, whereas normally it costs that 4 effective resources. You can just swap them in and out with each other with the katanas. It's fun, but again, like in solo, I don't really find myself playing Armed to the Teeth outside of like a game where I'm intentionally trying to push it longer, because I could just play this card as fire and win.
Yeah, I've had that problem as well. Even in some two-player games, that first game was alongside X-23, and X-23 and Deadpool together still win games very quickly.
Yep. Oh my goodness. Yeah, they push damage so hard.
I want to talk about pushing the game longer on purpose to use some of this stuff because, like I say, I'm not a rush guy. So my favorite build I've done with Deadpool has actually been Shield Justice. So
Oh, interesting.
I
Okay.
the theme I've got in my head here, which I really enjoy, is that Shield are keeping an eye on Deadpool. They are worried about him. It's on multiple levels. So Deadpool is doing Deadpool things, but Shield are trying to, mitigate the collateral damage. They're trying to navigate all these crazy things going on. So I'm using like things like surveillance teams to try and keep that threat down. He's got the acceleration tokens while they're trying to keep it down. Unsurveillance as well. So got like surveillance kind of theme where they're watching him. But then I like global logistics, so I can dodge those encounter cards that would just defeat him, by playing with the deck. So it doesn't win half as fast as just going crazy with Deadpool, but it's a lot of fun. So I've really enjoyed that one. I wanted to shout it out.
That's fun. I think my favorite actually has been Justice with him, because it gives you all the access to threat removal if you are running in a longer game. One of the matchups that I haven't tried yet, but I do really want to, is Magneto, where he has kind of that, not even artificial, but that like stoppage. Like you cannot rush Magneto because you have to go through the side scheme deck before he can sustain enough damage to actually defeat him. So I'm interested to try that. But the Justice games where you can flip down, he is a mutant, or some people call him a mutant at least. You flip down to Alter Ego, and you have all the access to Moira to flip up. I'm running Moira in a lot of Deadpool decks because almost every single turn I get to draw a card because I'm flipping over with her. But then also just like the X Mansions, Mutant Educations, and all of this stuff, and then you can let the shields, or not the shield stuff, the yellow cards do the threat removal, and you can really kind of focus on damage. On the flip side of the coin, if you want to go full threat removal, Deadpool can be an absolute beast in multiplayer with Yoo-Hoo. If you go Symbiote Suit, which is even less risk in multiplayer because you're passing out 1 extra encounter card, 25% extra encounter cards in a 4-player game rather than 100% extra. Yoo-Hoo, if you have full health, you're looking at 19 plus, endurance, 22 health, take 21 damage with Overwatch. You're removing 42 threat with 2 effective resources, or I guess 3 effective resources with Overwatch, which is probably more than you would ever need.
Yeah, those are some really good points. I've really enjoyed that with him. And yeah, the multiplayer, the Overwatch thing is crazy. Even in multiplayer with another Justice player, you can trigger their Overwatch, with your Yoo-Hoo. So you've got so much flexibility as well to help out. So I think he's surprisingly good, but you do sometimes lose out of nowhere. That Magneto thing was really interesting. That game that I lost, like my second game with him, was against Hela, and I couldn't just win against Hela. So I got some indirect damage from one of her cards. Just to get through the side schemes. So I took some indirect damage from an encounter card, and I had no allies, and I was like, well, this is it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do want to build him because I think you could probably maybe not take that rush deck against Hela or the Magnetos, the ones that have those additional damage. Magneto has a lot of little ping damage here and there as well. And so I wonder if you just build slightly differently, or you play slightly less recklessly. No, that's off the table. Never mind. I don't want to do that. But there are options to build. Actually, you know what? The last card that I totally forgot about until just now is the Chimichanga Truck. I love this card. This design is so freaking cool because it incentivizes your recovery. Now, Deadpool has the highest recovery in the game at 8, but it says when any player would make a basic recovery, they get to ready. And that in a multiplayer game, just recovering feels bad.
Yeah, this is such a cool card because not only does it, support that, kind of underutilized recovery stat, not kind of what you want to be using a lot of the time. But I love that it's, any identity. So, again, playing alongside X-23, who has the second best recovery in the game, that's
Yeah.
super cool. But just in general, you're always getting use. It's basically a free ready up for someone every turn. In multiplayer, people can flip down a lot more easily. Other people can use that if they need it. You can really help people out because Deadpool doesn't, mind if he doesn't use his basic attack or basic forwarding. That's not really what he's about. He can, do fine with it, but yeah, such a cool card. So Deadpool's a weird one. I think overall for him, actually to compare both heroes, I think I prefer X-23 by quite a bit, but Deadpool's really, really fun for those kind of, that very different experience.
Yeah, he is unique to say the least.
Do you have a preference between the heroes? Have you got one, or do you need to play them a bit more? No, I'm going to pressure you. What's your early opinion?
My early opinion is that I think I'm having more fun with Deadpool, but long term I will enjoy X-23 more. I haven't played as much X-23, but I think X-23 will be more rewarding the more I play her. And so therefore I think I kind of cheated, I guess, and said both of them. So right now Deadpool, I think in a week or two it's going to be X-23.
That's fine. I think that's fair, and I feel like that a lot of people might resonate with that. So we'll let your answering both characters slide.
Perfect.
Yeah, I will say for X-23, one very quick thing is that because she's got so many of those cheap cards and readying things, you can tweak her deck in a tiny way, and it can kind of have a knock-on effect to how you're using those readies and cards. So I feel like her decks, a lot of them will want very similar cards to each other, but small tweaks have quite a big effect. So that's not always the case for a lot of characters. So I've been really enjoying that.
Nice. Okay.
And
Now the pool aspect.
Yes. I think I would like you to talk about this first because I think your opinion might, and I'm just going on a guess here, might reflect what I've generally seen from the community, probably more than mine. So I feel like that might be a good place to start. And I don't know if that's true, but I am curious for your thoughts.
Okay, yeah. So I will preface my statement with I don't like crazy chaotic play necessarily. I am much more on the control side of the spectrum when it comes to playing Marvel Champ. Well, actually kind of playing any game really. I like to have things under control, and the pool aspect is the opposite of that. That being said, I thought I would have some fun with the pool aspect. I don't know if I'm just a bad player or I am not vibing with the pool aspect. It's challenging me, I think. I'm having a hard time. Like my streams, I think I've played, oh my goodness, I should know this, but they all run together. I think I've probably played 8 games with the pool aspect on stream, and I have a 25% win rate with pool. And I don't know if I'm just going all in on pool and too much in on pool. And I think that one of the things that I was saying in the last time when I was playing Shadow Pool, I think, where the Shadowcat pool, where I think the pool aspect, you really have to limit yourself on how many of those pink cards you put in your deck because they are all they can be chaotic. And I think, 50-50, 60-40, 75-25 basic pool split is probably just going to be a lot more successful than a, reversing that percentage split. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm just not getting it. I don't know if I'm just not, it's just not my play style. I don't know if I'm just going too much into all of these bad icons or what, but it's not working for me.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and that is sort of the impression I got because I dropped into your stream yesterday, and I heard some of the suffering, and I saw a poll recently from D20 Woodworking who had a poll for what is your favorite aspect with X-23, but it only included 4 aspects. So I commented, "Where's the pool aspect option?"
Yeah,
and his response was in the trash.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So I will say that I think that there's kind of 2 different ways that you can play the pool aspect. I think the events are really solid. The events are really cool. And then some of the upgrades are really interesting. The problem, I think all of my problems I think come from the icons, the live dangerously's of the world, some of the allies, and I just I amplify and hazard and crisis myself to death whenever I play pool. And that's, I think, if you just kind of skew away from those a little bit and you go to the get rages, the cut uppers, the mulligans of the world, like you're going to have a much higher success rate. I'm curious how much the pool, how good characters are in the pool aspect when you look at characters that already have a very solid basic package and can supplement some of the better cards in the pool aspect with those basic cards, rather than the characters that really want to lean heavy into an aspect and have very little basic cards. Where that line is and how you can draw that.
Yeah. So I like what you're saying there toward the end, basic heavy characters can do. I completely agree with, people who already have a good basic package can, supplement it with some pool stuff and have a really good time. But I'm going to come and disagree with you, and I guess by extension, D20 woodworking from what I know. I like the pool aspect more than I thought, but I didn't get there immediately. I went on a journey. So we're gonna go on a story time adventure here.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm here. I got my popcorn. I'm ready.
As a deck builder, when I knew there was a new aspect coming, I was super excited. When we got close to release date, I was super excited. And when I played it, I was like, okay. I played it again, and I'm thinking, what heroes is this actually good for? And, it's not a competitive game necessarily, and it's going to be hard for one aspect, which has one pack for it, even if it's a large pack, to compete with aspects which have had years of development. But even then, you should obviously, if it's been released, be able to win games with it stuff. And it wasn't like I was losing, but, I was definitely having a struggle with it, and I was thinking, this is kind of disappointing. Maybe D20 was right. But it kind of had, and it's only been out for like a week or so, it's happened in a very short period of time, but it's kind of had a sudden renaissance from me. And I think something clicked with me, something unlocked, and I am now a huge fan of the pool aspect. But I think it takes some careful deck building, and I will say some of my favorite decks for it do look a little bit similar to my favorite decks for it for other characters. But, it does have a limited choice of cards here. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you say the icons. You can introduce a lot of bad icons, but then you're kind of, basically introducing your own demise. In in solo play, you don't have so much of a buffer. So an extra acceleration token, that's kind of a lot less room on the main scheme. Then if there's an amplify as well, if they do scheme, now you've got less room on the main scheme, and they're scheming for more, and it's kind of just bad into bad snowballing. So my success with it has been with very careful use of those icons, on very specific, characters or builds, or just ignoring them. So that means one at best, maybe, or so maybe two of the allies. Then not worrying about live dangerously, not worrying about things like distraction, which had a crisis, leaving all that behind. I'm basically running mulligan and then a bunch of the upgrades. That's kind of what my success has been. So it still takes a significant portion of the deck, I would say, especially with the resource cards, the resource cards, where the healthier you are, the more resources you get. I love that mechanic. Really dynamic how the values change, and I can influence your gameplay. But yeah, I've kind of been going for safe pool aspect, and for me, that's actually worked really well.
Nice. I will say I love Mulligan. I think Mulligan's a great card. 3-cost event. Discard your hand, draw up to your hand size, especially when you combine that with all the syncs that we got in the pool aspect with all the meta games, which is another thing that I've been having a lot of fun with the meta games, where like rock, paper, scissors, tic-tac-toe, move threat, heal damage, don't get 3 in a row until you want to deal 7 damage, that kind of stuff. I've been having a lot of fun with the meta games, and so maybe I need to revisit and just kind of focus on Mulligan, meta games, basic, and I think you could have a lot more success in that direction. And so that's really, I guess, good to hear from that you kind of had the same struggles and kind of were able to navigate through that. It is a little sad that I don't know if not using, but half that pack is underutilized because of all the icons.
Yeah, I do think you can use the icons, but you have to be careful. It suits some heroes more than others, and it's a lot safer in multiplayer because, one acceleration token can be much more easily absorbed if the main scheme is, got double, triple, or quadruple the threat threshold, and an extra encounter card from a hazard icon. 4 people can deal with 5 cards much easier than 1 person can deal with 2. It's just have more room to maneuver, that kind of thing. Even Crisis, it's pretty bad in multiplayer, but at least you might have a lot of main scheme to go. You guys can all decide, okay, now we're going to focus on damage, that kind of thing. Yep. It's only Amplify, which I think gets worse in multiplayer. So that is kind of, in a lot of solo decks, I've just been going for Amplify, and I have a defense plan kind of based on already to deal with that a lot, and that has been good for me. And the other fun way to do it is use the plot convenience support card, which if you're not aware listening, it's a support 2 cost that you can exhaust to basically store an aspect card there, and then another turn you can exhaust it to get the aspect card back. And while you can use this in multiplayer, because any player can trigger that card, so you can swap cards around, which is a whole topic. I feel like we do a whole episode on that. But just for a single deck perspective, you can take the Live Dangerously side scheme, which is a 0-cost side scheme that introduces all the bad icons. You can stash it in plot convenience for when you have everything set up to use it, and then draw it and unleash it. And there's a card called Stick-to-itiveness. I think it's pronounced. I hope it's pronounced.
Yep.
It is readies you up.
Yeah.
And then there is a really good card. It just sits on the board. It's an upgrade. You pay 1 physical, what you ready. And then there are the laser swords that we talked about earlier. And you get +1 attack for each bad icon. So if you can get Stick-to-itiveness on the board, get laser swords on the board, and then, get Live Dangerously to introduce all those bad icons at the right time, you can have a 2 attack character can become a 6 attack character and ready up. And that's kind of thing, just timing it for that burst damage has been really fun for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I've enjoyed Stick-to-itiveness. I have enjoyed laser swords, and I think, I'm just kind of echoing what some of my thoughts were on the stream, is that pool seems too slow for solo, and I like what you're saying in multiplayer, but laser swords is a bonkers fun card.
There are so many fun cards in pool, so I'm really enjoying that. Something I want to put out there is I think pool aspect suits characters that are very sort of focused on their own kit and or have a lot of money, because those upgrades are really good. So if you can kind of afford to get them out or controlling the board, I think that can really snowball, because I love those upgrades. And I think Mulligan is kind of the best card in pool in some ways.
Yeah.
Because of what you're saying. So I think you already described it a bit, but in case it wasn't in full detail, 3-cost event, you cannot play this card if you played another card this phase, and the action is to basically scrap your hand and redraw it. But you can spend a lot of resources without, playing a card officially. So we've got cards like Tic-Tac-Toe, Blackout, Stick-to-itiveness, but also in basic Plan B, which I've enjoyed. It's one of my favorite cards.
Just don't discard Mulligan.
It's a risk. It hasn't happened to me yet, but it probably should have, in honesty. I've been quite lucky there. But yeah, you can basically empty your hand down to the bare minimum, which might be Mulligan and whatever you need to pay for it, or you can use resource generators. Triple resources work really well here. Or Starlord can go down to just Mulligan and use his hero ability, which I've enjoyed. And basically you redraw your entire hand. It feels like cheating. You're getting almost, well, not quite, but several cards worth of value. Even defense cards kind of fall into this as well. It's just different phase in the villain phase. And then you just refill your hand after doing a bunch of stuff. That has been really strong for me. But it's also been really strong because that burns through your deck faster to find those key upgrades and things you want.
Nice. Okay. You want to do some community questions?
Yeah, let's do some community questions here. I'm excited for this. We didn't do them last week because we ran out of time, but also because I lost the audio, it kind of worked out for the best. So we didn't lose answers to anyone's questions. So I'm going to open it up myself, I think. I'm feeling greedy here. Okay, I want to ask, I am. Deadpool's rubbing off on me. I'm going to ask a bit of I'm going to say unusual question from Fred here. This is actually from quite a few weeks ago. We never got around to it, but I want your opinion on this. Would a PvP, player versus player version of Marvel Champions be a good thing, if at all possible in some way?
I don't necessarily think I would enjoy that. I think that there would be a subset of the community that could enjoy it. I could see it as like a scenario design or something like that to come up with some rules to do that. I think it would be a massive overhaul, and there would be so many questions that come in with that. I think if there was a PvP version of this game, I wouldn't necessarily want to see it like the game Genic Matt's had it set up, like head to head. I think I would rather see it the way that Marvel Legendary did it, where it's a cooperative game overall, but there are rules to score and play it competitively based on how well you do in the game. Does that make any sense?
That does make a lot of sense. That is giving me a lot of, Legolas and Gimli kind of,
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
That kind of thing. So that's really fun. Yeah, I think it would have to be something like that for it to work. When I read this question, what popped into my head was something like maybe like a race. Maybe you're both set up almost like a solo
Oh,
game, but
yeah.
whoever wins in the fewest turns, or some kind of competitive condition that you're tracking. So you're not just necessarily hitting each other directly, but something along those lines. I'm gonna say, I think it would be a good thing if it existed outside of the rest of the game in terms of release schedule and that. But I think if it would, cost me a normal kind of, product, a campaign box or a scenario pack to introduce it, then I would probably not prefer it. So interesting one there. I'm intrigued, but I
Yeah.
think I would prefer more cooperative.
Yeah. And I'll give a quick shout real quick to, if anyone is looking for a competitive style play, to Solo Champions League, which is a league. It's a community run league where every single season they have multiple games that are set. So you play this hero and you get to choose your aspect, or you have a set aspect, you choose the hero against an encounter. And based on how well you do in that encounter, that's turns taken, stuff on the board, et cetera, it has like an algorithmically generated score that then can rank you against other players. So it does have a competitive sense. And so if you're interested in that, it's called Solo Champions League. It's a lot of fun. It is really interesting to see how you can line up and how people will build for the different scenarios and stuff. So if you're looking for a competitive way to play the game, that is one way to do it.
Yeah, I think that's run by, I hope I'm saying the name right, Josaru or something along those lines, I think. They're a very cool guy. Astrodar, who I think was on the group roundtable sort of video on your channel, Nelson, we did together. I believe he's quite heavily involved with it. I think he's on the podcast that's focused around it. So, yeah, really cool.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to bring in a question from Doc H. So I'm excited for this one. How do you construct a deck, especially maybe for core set heroes, for new players to learn?
So for me, that one is going to be different depending on the new player. If the new player has played lots of Magic the Gathering, or even better, like Arkham Horror, or even Lord of the Rings, from Fantasy Flight Games as well, they're gonna have a much easier time adapting than someone who's got very little experience with that kind of game. But in general, I go for the very simplest heroes possible with the very simplest cards. I don't worry about them being powerful or anything like that, against, standard Rhino, which I usually stick to as the sort of tutorial one. If they're from like a background that's played like Arkham or something, I will go a bit more complicated and maybe a little bit more challenging on the villain as well. But generally, simple as possible. I'm putting in uppercuts. I'm putting in things that just say pay cost, do damage, pay cost, remove threat. Maybe a little bit of cards which talk to each other, but any like, this card increases this card by like 1 damage. Something simple with very few words. Because getting the rules to the game, I think, is the hardest part that they're most focused on. So I like to try and, that is my approach. What do you think, Nelson?
So I did not have an answer, so I'm going to steal the answer from Brant, who I thought had the most excellent answer to this question ever. I don't actually remember where I heard him say this, but Brant from Step Into the Portal, he said, like, take a hero that they're interested in, and if it is a more complex hero, maybe try and push them, maybe if they have a top 3 heroes, because you kind of want them to feel engaged, and load the deck with events. Just let them go with events. And the encounter, or the hero specific cards have upgrades and allies and stuff that they can play around. But like what you're saying, pay cost do thing is really easy to wrap your head around. So I would load the deck with 20 to 25 events, and just like you're saying, you go standard Rhino. I've also done Absorbing Man, just to kind of have a little bit more headroom. And in a 2-player game, Rhino is fine, but Rhino can kind of hit a little hard, honestly. He can be a little mean. But yeah, just find an easier villain, and I really liked Rand's answer. Just let them play events, and you kind of can, as the experienced player, fix everything else.
Yeah, I think that's great advice as well. I definitely think event heavy is the way to go, because those tend to be a bit more straightforward. And it's interesting, I haven't always, I think I did it originally once or twice, but I generally give them a list of like 6 or 7 heroes that I think are the easiest, and they pick your favorite from those, which is maybe a bit of a harsher compromise. But I think that's generally really, really good advice. So I like that answer a lot.
Nice. Cool. I think we have time for at least one more question. You want to pick one more off? We have a really solid list. I like all these questions. Good job, y'all. And if you want to send in questions, remember, shadowthecast@gmail.com. But really good stuff from the community.
Okay, let's go for a question from Ali here. And Ali says, do you ever run the decks out of the pack when you get a new pack, or do you always split it down and make your own deck?
I I never I can't remember the last time I played a precon. Honestly, I don't know if I've played a precon since I've started my channel. I get so much satisfaction and so much of my joy of this game comes from building decks that I really don't necessarily play with the precon stuff. Now what I've started to do is take a lot of the precon concepts. So I tried to do this X-23 and I looked back on my deck and I was like, I didn't even use like any of the cards that came in our pack. But I will take like the concepts from that. If I have, new allies or something, I try and run those in that constructed deck. But really, I am pretty much always going straight for the deck building.
Yeah, I'm a little bit similar. Now, when I first got introduced to the game, it was through my friend's collection, so I was playing all kinds of decks they provided. And when I got my own cards, that was around Galaxy's Most Wanted. I wanted to make my own decks a bit similar to what I'd seen there. So I just took all this precon, it's almost like, I'd compare it to, big tub of Lego bricks when I was a child, and I started putting things together myself.
Nice.
But these days, I like to tweak the precons to try and use as many of the new cards as I can within one deck to get like kind of a feel for them, and it's just fun to use new stuff, really. But it varies, I think I've told this story before. Maybe it was on here, or maybe it was on the Winning Hand podcast. My partner really said, let's use the precons, yeah, and that was in the Mutant Genesis campaign, and the Colossus precon was so terrible it put her off that character forever.
Oh no, yeah.
So from then on, I've very heavily edited all the precons before we've ever played them. Then yeah, they're just torn to pieces. They're broken down.
And I feel like I have a supplemental reading for each one of these questions today. But the best resource that I've ever seen on this is a video from Get Up and Game, or Josh. And they have a video called Turn a Precon into a Powerhouse in 3 Easy Steps. And that is a 16-minute video that kind of talks about how you can take a precon and move it into a much more viable build. Because a lot of the times the precons are going to give you 3 copies of a card where you only need 1 of them. Josh just has such a good way of presenting information. So if you have not seen that video, I would definitely check that out on his channel.
Yeah, I love his presentation. It's always very clear and to the point, which I enjoy. Yeah. What's your final question for the day?
Oh, I get one more. Sweet. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, I need to look. We're gonna stall for some time. So I'm going to choose a question from Dan the Crow 1701, and I'm excited because we talk a lot about mechanics on this podcast, and this is a thematic question. So it'll be fun to deviate it slightly. So what character has the most thematic design, overall design from hero card to obligation nemesis? They give a couple of examples here, like Peter Quill is reckless, extra encounter card, Iron Man needs to build out his suit, etc., etc. So, who do you think is the most thematic hero in the game? And yeah, we'll leave it at that.
That's a really good question, and honestly, I love the examples there. I think I've said this, in quite a lot of places at this point, but Star-Lord is my favorite character. I do think he's extremely thematic. But I think if you're going for theme, Iron Man is even better, because what does Iron Man do? Well, he's just a guy that builds a suit. What do? You build the suit. It's pretty perfect, if I'm honest. Now, I wasn't prepared for this question, so I'm going to stall as I browse. I do have the characters up here. I'm actually going to go for Black Widow, because I think all that preparation first, and the alter ego shenanigans, kind of like you're infiltrating, or you're not always in the fight. I think that's a really, really strong one as well. So I really enjoy that.
Nice. Yeah, I had 2 answers to this. One would be Drax, where kind of he wants to take attacks. He's, pumping himself up. He's getting ready. He's like, now I'm angry type situation, and just goes at that villain. So I think Drax is really thematic. And then also, I don't know if this is the most thematic, but I love the way that they implemented the theme for Domino and the manipulation of her luck ability, being able to swap cards with the top of your deck, the discard pile, and her whole thing is to probability manipulation, and it's really hard to introduce that type of theme into a game where you want to be planning so much and there's so little variety. Like you got the boost cards, you got encounter cards, that kind of stuff. But a lot of the things you can plan for. So you don't want to necessarily introduce rolling dice or something like that. And I feel like the way that she's able to manipulate her deck to get where you want, I thought that was a really clever way to implement like kind of the luck of Domino into the mechanics of the game.
Yeah, Domino's a great shout. Very clever design. I'm actually going to throw out one more surprise one just quickly while I remember it, and this might be my top one here.
Okay.
And there are three characters which have cards which change size, but the most thematic one for me is Ant-Man. Ant-Man changes size. His card actually changes size. I feel like it doesn't get any more, on theme than that. And what I like about his card, changing size compared to the other ones, is it has a response when you change it. So when you go into giant form, you get to deal damage. It's got that kind of that impact. That team. I can kind of feel like I'm, enlarged and now hitting something, or I can shrink down and deal with this problem. So I really enjoy that.
Nice. Yeah, Ant-Man is a fantastic shout because physically changing a card size when you're tiny or big, that's a great way to implement theme. Excellent. So
that was a cool question. Sorry.
Yeah, that is a really good question from Dan the Crow. So what are you playing this week? I don't have a lot coming up. We're recording this right before I leave for Thanksgiving break, and so I am not bringing my collection because it's very heavy. What are you doing this next week, and what maybe we get a tease for what's coming out next on Villain Theory's channel?
Yes, that's a great question. So I'm going to be honest. I'm still really enjoying the pool aspect. Now it's kind of clicked with me. I've got 4 or 5 decks that I want to publish all of them. I'll probably only publish 1 or 2, but like I'm really, really enjoying, tweaking those, learning that new aspect, getting to grips with it. So I'll be playing that and probably the new heroes still, especially Deadpool, who I didn't have as much time with yet as X-23. So that's probably what I'm going to be playing. In terms of my channel, when's this video coming out? This is always the question. The next video I'm going to do, if I'm well enough, because there's a bit of illness in the house now, which I'm likely to catch, but we'll see. I actually want to do a quick guide to the pool aspect. I know after a week I've not mastered it, but I think it would probably help people. If I have something out that's got like at least some basic guidelines that have helped me at least do well in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's a really cool one.
So yeah, not a full guide, but just first impressions guide kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not first impressions, but yeah, early guide. And then I will also be having a review of X-23 and Deadpool coming out. And after that, a little exclusive tease here. I was actually thinking, because I'm really probably of the YouTubers I know at least the more deck buildery focused one.
Yeah.
Maybe doing a buyer's guide more toward building decks. The deck building cards very specifically.
Ooh,
so that's something I was thinking about. We're almost in December, so I thought that might be a timely thing to do.
That'll be an awesome video. Looking forward to that. Sweet. So we have another episode. What I almost called you Adam because that's what we're going to be talking about next. Next episode, we're going to be talking about multi-aspect heroes. So heroes that can bring in cards from off aspects. So Gamora, Cyclops, Adam Warlock, Spider-Woman, Cable. There's a lot of them. Regardless. Yeah, there's a lot of them. So we're going to be doing a whole episode around multi-aspect heroes, kind of thoughts around them, how to build for them, some of the fun things you can do when you're crossing aspects. So that's going to be what's coming up next. You can, like we were saying, you can send in questions for the community questions to shadowthecast@gmail.com. Or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you can just drop those questions in the comments down below. But Villain, anything else before we close out the episode?
I think we've covered a good amount of stuff. What I would like to know from people, if you just want to drop a comment or an email as well, is how have you got on with the pool aspect? Because this is such a new thing. I think everyone's going to have different opinions, and I'm really curious to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'll be interesting because I feel like it is polarizing. The polarizing pool aspect. Cool. Well, thank you all so very much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode of Shadow of the Cast. Bye.
Bye.